The salt marshes west of Greyhaven had always groaned like a wounded animal when the tide pressed inland, but on the eve of every 10th equinox, the land grew quieter, as if it were holding its breath for something older than the sea. I fled that hush 10 years ago, after my sister Esther walked toward the dunes, and was never seen again. But memories, like gulls on a corpse, will circle until they taste marrow. So I returned, decrepit suitcase in hand, to the crumbling Victorian house we had inherited, only to find the town unchanged, still bowed beneath weather-beaten roofs and perpetual brine. The locals refused to meet my gaze. They recognized the shape of my grief, and it resembled their own. They knew what was coming up the coast, borne by mist and a calliope tune that could not have survived the rust in its pipes. When I asked where it might appear, old Captain Rollins spat seawater on his boot and muttered, "Where the shore forgets its own name." My pulse quickened, because that was what Esther had whispered, not shouted in her last conscious hour. She'd repeated it like a prayer, or maybe a ticket. I set off at dusk, following the wrought-silver glow of the distant lighthouse. The wind carried an aroma of burnt sugar laced with iodine, and the sand, coarse as ground bone, slithered under my shoes. Then I heard it, an almost jaunty waltz, warped by salt and time. The coastal carnival had returned. It squatted on the liminal ribbon of beach revealed only at the lowest tide, as though it had surfaced from the ocean floor rather than traveled across it. Tents, striped burgundy and funeral black, snapped in the breeze. Unlit lanterns dangled like dead men from fraying ropes. The Ferris wheel, if it was still a wheel, rose crookedly against the bruised sky, its spokes made from what looked dismayingly like ribs. Each carriage swayed, empty yet expectant. Near the entrance stood a turnstile wrought from anchor chains. A sign, flaking paint in ornate letters, read, "Admittance, for one memory no return." Behind the gate lounged a tall figure, wearing a frock coat the color of drowned moss. His face was obscured by a porcelain half-mask, cracked at the mouth as though he smiled too violently. When he beckoned, his gloves squealed like wet leather. "What would you surrender?" he asked. "To voyage beyond forgetting?" I tried to steady my courage. "I'm looking for my sister. She came here 10 years ago." He tilted his head. "Then she already paid. But perhaps you still carry change." I felt the weight of Esther's locket around my neck, the last photograph of us inside. It seemed too precious, though he hadn't asked for objects. He wanted what nestled behind the eyes. Yet I knew no gate in this place would open for free. I closed my eyes and summoned the smell of my mother's hair, lavender and coal smoke, the night she sang us to sleep while father labored at sea. The ticket-taker inhaled sharply, as if drawing that scent through my nostrils into his own. "Accept it," he murmured. A cold sting lanced my temple. When I opened my eyes, I could no longer remember the lullaby's melody, only the shape of a voice beyond hearing. A turnstile bar clicked, and I stepped inside. The midway was paved with sea glass that crunched underfoot. Stalls offered saltwater taffy that twitched as though still alive, and dolls stitched from sailors' maps. Barkers crooned invitations, but their mouths never moved. The words leaked from beneath their lapels like escaping steam. Everywhere I looked, visitors wandered with blank expressions, each trailing small, phosphorescent wisps. Thoughts unmoored, bobbing like jellyfish in their wake. I feared touching one. I suspected it might sting, with a memory I could no longer grip. An automatonic carousel occupied the center square. A brass plaque called it the Turn of Whispers. Children mounted the beasts, though I could not see any parents. Instead, an enormous woman draped in funeral veils operated the crank. Each revolution she paused, lifted a kid's chin and siphoned a shimmering ribbon from their ear. The child dismounted, glass-eyed, then drifted aimlessly, while the creature they'd ridden shuddered into fresh vigor. I caught her looking at me, weighing the currency in my skull. I moved on, Past the carousel, beyond a row of dark shooting galleries where rifles fired seawater instead of bullets, stood a mirror maze. Its facade was a Gothic nave of fractured glass, smooth as black ice. The sign above the archway read, "House of Mercial. Vows, discover what you would die to forget." Esther had always loved mazes. If any place had captured her, it was inside that glittering mouth. My chest tightened. I approached, but a young man staggered out first, sobbing. He collapsed onto the sand, beating his head with both fists until blood flecked the glass behind him. Two masked attendants lifted him gently, as if he were a toddler, and laid him on a slate stretcher. When they bore him into the shadows, I saw the gap in his eyes. He couldn't remember why tears existed. The attendants returned and reset the entrance. I hesitated, thinking of the lullaby already lost, but Esther's face reeled me in like a hooked fish. I crossed the threshold, and every pain swallowed the world. Inside, the air was brined glass, cold, brittle, echoing. Mirrors stretched into infinity, reflecting me as 1,000 pale wraiths. Lanterns above glowed with sickly green flames. At each junction, whispers rose from the surface, coaxing, "This way to unburden, that way to release." My pulse pounded so loudly I could not tell if their words formed outside or inside my head. I advanced until a reflection stepped free of its panel. She looked like me, but younger. 17, the age I'd been the night Esther vanished. Her eyes brimmed with questions I had quenched over a decade of guilt. She approached, reached out. When our palms met, cold pierced my bones and numbed them. Images erupted. Esther brushing sea foam from her boots while we planned to run away after graduation. Esther laughing as we built a bonfire of our school books on the beach. Scenes I cherished flickered, then dimmed. Like film sizzling in a projector flame, the mirror self swallowed them greedily. "Payment," she hissed, smile widening. "Proceed." I screamed and shoved her back. She melted into the glass, carrying the recollections with her. I lurched forward, dizzy. And there, deep within the labyrinth, I spotted a moving shape. A girl whose cinnamon braid swung exactly as Esther's had. I bolted, shards crunching underfoot. Corridors tightened. The glass vibrated with a low moan, as though the carnival itself were hungry. Finally, I emerged into a circular chamber, walls spiraling upward like a nautilus shell of mirrors. In the middle stood a small stage. On it, frozen like a marionette missing strings, was Esther. She had not aged. Her eyes were closed, hands clasped as if in prayer. A thin silver filament ran from her chest into the rafters, where it disappeared within a huge cogwork heart, translucent and throbbing. Hundreds of filaments from invisible sources joined there, pulsing in unison. I realized the maze, and perhaps the whole fair, was powered by these stolen memories, the heartbeat, once, for each forgotten moment. "Esther!" I shouted, stepping onto the platform. The air around her hummed with static. When I touched her shoulder, her eyes fluttered open. Black irises fluttered with starlight. Her mouth moved without sound. The filament tightened. She winced. I tried to snap it, but my fingers burned as if clasping ice and ember simultaneously. "You can't free what fuels the wheel," said a voice behind me. The masked ticket-taker leaned against a pillar, his shadow stretching thrice his height. Up close, the cracks in his porcelain mask crawled like barnacles, exposing glimpses of raw flesh beneath. "Her memories spin the carnival," he continued. "Each decade we must dine, lest we sink back beneath the waves. You may join her, of course. One never travels alone, after all." Anger ignited something reckless in me. "Take everything I have," I offered, voice trembling. "If you'll release her." A pause, broken only by the groan of the heart gearing above. He tilted his head. "All you have would power but a single ride, an evening's entertainment. We require more durable engines." I glanced up at the pulsing core. If destroying it severed the web, perhaps Esther could waken. A ladder of mirrored rungs spiraled the chamber. I sprinted for it, he lunged, but I surprised both of us by swinging a broken shard I had pocketed earlier. Porcelain shattered, revealing a slough of barnacled bone. He recoiled, shrieking. I scrambled up the ladder. As I climbed, the walls reflected versions of myself flickering with missing frames. I could no longer recall the taste of cocoa by the hearth or the color of our childhood roses. The carnival was feeding as I ascended, my vision blurred, but rage propelled me until I reached the suspended heart. Up close, it resembled crystal doused in whale oil, illuminating veins coursing with quicksilver images, lovers' kisses, birthday candles, sunlit fields. I searched for a point weak enough to break. The filament from Esther pulsed brighter than the others. I wrapped it around my fists and yanked. Lightning lanced my skull. Memories tore free like sails in a gale. The scrape of Esther's violin, the rhythm of my father's footsteps on the porch, the first boy who tasted my lips in secret. I felt them leave, yet I hauled harder. Glass fractured. A fissure snaked across the heart's surface. Below, the carnival roared in protest. Rides screeching, tents folding like wounded birds. The masked man, bleeding brine, began to climb after me, shrieking in a voice of many. The filament snapped. The crystal heart shattered in a concussion of luminous shards. A cyclone of memories burst free, spiraling through the chamber like phosphorescent plankton caught in a storm. My ears rang. My mouth tasted of rust. I expected the carnival to crumble, but instead the shards hovered, reforming into a new shape, a wheel of mirrored glass, spinning faster and faster until it birthed a doorway of liquid light. Through it, I glimpsed a black ocean under a green aurora, and a procession of lost souls drifting toward distant thunder. Esther collapsed onto the stage, filament dissolved. I half climbed, half fell to her side. She blinked, disoriented but alive. I pulled her up. She felt impossibly light, as though hollowed out. Screams erupted behind us. The attendants, the barkers, the veiled woman, all shredded into ribbons of shadow, sucked toward the doorway like leaves into a drain. The masked man dug his fingers into the floor, resisting the pull. His eyes, twin pits of low-tide darkness, fixed on me with hate. "You will remember nothing," he howled as the wind tore pieces from him. "I can live with that," I replied, unsure if it was true. The doorway widened, its hunger growing. Planks cracked, booths toppled. I grabbed Esther's hand and ran. The maze walls fell away, granting a clear path to the exit. Lanterns burst one by one. Outside, the midway convulsed, rides spinning berserk. But the turnstile still stood, anchored in the sand by chains older than rust. We hurtled through as the ground quaked. Behind us, the carnival folded inward, sucked piece by piece into the radiant rift, until only the Ferris wheel remained, spokes jangling like wind chimes. It resisted, moored by decades of unshed memories. Then, even it surrendered, spinning once more before tumbling into light. The doorway sealed after it, with a sigh like a wave retreating over pebbles. Night rushed back, starless and cold. The beach, now bare, stretched quieter than I had ever known it. Tide foam lapped at our ankles, as if to claim any evidence of my crime. Esther and I collapsed on the damp sand. Moonlight found her face, and I realized she had aged after all, but in seconds, not years. Lines scored her brow, threads of silver wove through her braid. She looked at me with hollow confusion. "Who are you?" she whispered. My gut twisted. In severing the carnival, I had severed indelibly the memories that linked us. I searched my mind for her name, but discovered only an outline where our childhood should be. The letters slipped like fish through grasping fingers. Tears stung my eyes. I tried to speak, yet no words surfaced. The lullaby was gone. The roses, the bonfire. I could not even remember why I had fought. Only an ache remained, an echo of purpose, already fading. Sirens sounded from town. Someone had seen the lights, or maybe the absence of them. Figures carrying lanterns stumbled down the dunes, calling for survivors. Esther, or the woman beside me, rose unsteadily. She looked toward the voices, then at the sea. At last she extended her hand, palm up, asking silently for trust. I hesitated, heart thrashing. Though I did not recall her, I recognized the shape of loss in her eyes, a mirror to my own. Perhaps that was enough. I placed my palm on hers, and together we walked toward the distant glow of Greyhaven, past the house where songs no longer lived, into a future without memory, but with the faint possibility of earning new ones. Behind us, the surf erased our footprints, and somewhere far beneath its shifting skin, gears, the color of moonstone, began to turn again, patient, waiting for the next decade to ripen.